Hey, this is your good friend and CPA, Ray Wilburn, coming at you. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about filing your federal taxes, the forms you need. There are actually 3 forms, and a lot of people don't know this, so I'm going to school you. All right? Forgive me if I seem a little bit tired, but I've been grinding. All right, so the 3 forms, let's knock them out. The 3 forms are your Form 1040, which everybody probably knows, you file it every year. But what you might not know about are the forms 1040EZ and 1040A. So basically these forms, 1040EZ and 1040A, they're simpler forms. They have less things on them because there are very specific criteria in order to use them. So let's start with the simplest form, which is the 1040EZ. And basically you use the 1040EZ if you make less than $100,000. You're not going through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. You are either single or you're married filing joint. You don't have any kids. You don't have maids at home because you don't owe wages to a domestic helper. You don't have to pay alternative minimum tax, and that's something essentially if you make a certain amount of money, the IRS will charge you an additional alternative minimum tax. So basically, if you, just for simple sake, the alternative minimum tax means that you made a large amount of money, then you figured out your taxes with all your deductions and everything, and then the IRS says, you know what, there's a certain amount of money we need to get from you as a taxpayer, and whatever the difference between what you figured out and this alternative, this minimum, we're going to make you pay that difference in addition to whatever tax liability you paid throughout the year. So if you're less than $100,000, chances are the AMT doesn't apply to you anyway. You're not deducting any student loan interest, and you don't have any education credits, retirement saving contribution credit, or health coverage credits. So you can use a 1040EZ. Oh yeah. You also cannot be age 65 or blind. So what does that mean? That means very simply, you're not itemizing. You're not using a lot of credits. You don't have a maid. You don't make over, you and your wife or you and your husband don't make over 100,000, or you're a single person. So for many of us, we're trying to deduct student loan interest, so we can't use the 1040EZ. But it's a good form to know about. It's a cheaper form to do if you're going to Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, or one of those guys, or if you're going to a CPA and you're having them prepare your taxes. 1040EZ, simple form. I would recommend, if you're eligible to file a 1040EZ, go ahead and knock it out on TurboTax for $50. You're good. Now, more complex than the 1040EZ, but less complex than the 1040, the standard form 1040, is the form 1040A. Okay, and it's very important. If you're self-employed, you can't use a 1040EZ because your income has to come from wages, salaries, tips, scholarships, grants, interest, ordinary dividends, capital gains, pensions, annuities, IRAs, unemployment, and that's it. For the most part, in order to use a 1040EZ or a 1040A. If you can't use a 1040EZ, you can use a 1040A if the only difference is that you have a deduction for your student loan interest. If you can't, if you're self-employed, you're going with the regular standard form 1040. If you have a maid, going for the standard form 1040. If you make over $100,000, you're going with the standard form 1040. If you're over age 65 or blind by January 1st, 2009, anytime during that year, God forbid, but if you are, you can't use a form 1040 EZ. Okay, so 1040 EZ, very, very simple. 1040A, not that simple, but still less complex than the form 1040. You can use that if you're blind, if you're 65 or older, but you still have most of the requirements of the form EZ, of the 1040 EZ. Use a regular 1040 if you're itemizing, if you have lots of credits and adjustments towards your gross income, then you want to use a form 1040. Now, for a lot of you, I've used a lot of jargon that may be confusing, like standard deduction, itemized deductions, and really quickly to go over that, there'll be another, I'll put that out in another video, but really quickly, you're going to hear that a lot during tax season. You're going to hear standard deduction, itemized deduction. All that means is the IRS will give you a standard deduction and say, okay, here, take $8,000, offset your taxable income with that, okay? Or you can say, you know what? I drove X amount of miles to work, so I want a deduction for that. I got student loans. I own property, so I have expense dealing with my renters and blah, blah, blah. You're using other things, and you're itemizing everything you want to deduct from your taxes. It's a lot of work, and if you're not going to get $8,000, if you're not going to get more than the standard deduction, it makes sense to not even bother itemizing. But again, in subsequent videos, because we have until the end of the year to kind of get this together and get our taxes ready, I'm going to be putting out as much information as I can to get you ready, to get a big deduction and to understand your taxes a bit better. All right, so this is so just a quick review. If you're single or you're married with no kids and you make less than $100,000, you're not in bankruptcy, you don't have to pay alternative minimum tax, you don't have any student loan interest deductions, no education deductions, no retirement reductions, no health coverage deductions, you can use the Form 1040-EZ. But remember, to use the 1040-EZ, you can't be 65 or older and you can't be blind. If you are, then you drop it down a notch and you use the Form 1040-A, which is a little bit more complex, but still not that bad. Form 1040, a pretty good standard form for all of us others, self-employed, independent contractors, people that own property. It's a little bit more complex. It's got everything you need. As a general rule, I don't really even bother with the other forms. I just use the Form 1040. Will you go wrong if you use a Form 1040? No. The only time you'll get into trouble is if you erroneously try to file a Form 1040-EZ and you make $150,000 a year. The IRS is going to go ahead and kick that back to you and say fill out the right form. So as a general rule, you can't go wrong if you use a Form 1040. If you're doing your taxes yourself and you fit the criteria that I mentioned for the Form 1040-EZ or 1040-A, then go ahead and use those because they're simpler, and a lot of times with TurboTax they'll do it for you, so it's not a bad deal. They'll choose the form for you. A lot of times it's one of the standard questions that they use. But if you're trying to go to H&R Block or you're going to a CPA like myself, just things for you to know, because it's better for you to know. I think an informed client is the best client to have, so I'm just putting that out there for you. Again, this is your good friend and CPA Ray Wilburn signing off. Take care and get your stuff together. The IRS is a coming. All right, take care.